Jim Newman, I'm so grateful that you've taken the time to come talk with me today. You're someone whose work and whose YouTube channel I've spent a lot of time with. Um, Maybe just to start off, if you can talk a little bit about what you do and the kind of the gatherings that you host and sort of what that's like.
Do you mean like what's shared in the meetings?
Yeah, what's shared? What? Yeah, exactly.
Okay, it's it's actually really simple. It's that what is already that. And there's an experience that arises that lives in a illusory, objectified reality.
Hmm.
And in essence, it's not actually looking for that, but that's what's most desired. That I say that because you can't say what this is or what's truly longed for because it can't be known. And so this separate experience arises and seeks, and all it can do is seek objects. It can only seek in the separate reality that it knows. And that seeking and the experience of being separate are dissatisfying. And so it's, in a sense, you could say it's endless. So in the meetings, it's just pointed out that that's illusory. And in that sense, also hopeless because there isn't any separation. And that everything is already what's most desired. Everything is already that.
It's such a unique message because you're not going to find that message in most places that you look. It's such a
Well, in a way you do. You find it sort of everywhere. They
Mhm.
just have a little addendum to it and they tell you what to do about it.
Mhm.
And the way it's seen here is there isn't anyone to tell. There isn't anyone to tell, and there isn't anything that needs to be done.
So part of the context here when I encounter you and I encounter your message is the context of the landscape of like gurus, the landscape of people who are selling something or have a message. And I'm very skeptical of gurus in general. I've read enough stories of all sorts of, abuse of power and things like that. So how do you think about yourself in that context, in the context of people who are in selling or trying to impart a spiritual message?
Well, I don't. I'm this. There's no. This doesn't consider. I don't consider myself a guru. Certainly not a teacher. Teaching has to do with imparting knowledge. That would suggest that this knows something that doesn't. That's obviously not the case. Um, so I don't actually.
Yeah. And that's consistent with my experience of your work as well. Um, but it's a hard thing to explain. Like it's hard to explain to someone, um, what I enjoy, let's say in one of these meetings. Um,
Hmm.
to give a potential and way of explaining it now, trying to describe that now. And I wonder how this lands with you. Um, in the best, most complimentary way, in the best way this could possibly be taken, it feels like encountering a great piece of performance art.
Hmm.
Um, what I mean by this, art at its best, I think, has the ability to shake something in you, to shake people,
Hmm.
to reframe perspective.
Hmm.
But it's such a unique space that you create, and there's of course obviously like a back and forth, and there's a spontaneity and an unknown like sort of tension, chaos that sort of exists in that space. And yeah, I guess that's sort of maybe a way I would describe how I experience it,
Hmm.
as opposed to maybe like a spiritual teacher who, like as you say, has something to teach or something to impart.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, I mean, all I'd have to say to that is that would art seems to have some sort of intention,
Mhm.
and that might be one of the things that people sense at a meeting or in this conversation, that there isn't any intention because there isn't anything that needs to be imparted or is trying to be imparted. There's truly just a response to questions or yeah,
Yeah,
to yeah. There's no drive.
yeah,
I mean, how could there be if this is already that?
yeah.
What's most longed for? What would the intention be? What needs to happen?
I'll just say this, like, I imagine myself explaining to the listener now, like, trying to help them understand what this is, like
Well,
why.
you can't.
Right.
Yeah, you know that this it's already a failed thing. It's nothing to understand. Of course, the concepts, this is already everything, and that there's a separate experience that arises and can only find objects. And in the end, what's longed for is this, which is everything already. That you can explain or describe, but that's not what's being said. Understanding those concepts isn't actually what's being pointed to.
But in the context of one of your gatherings, and if I'm sitting and I'm in the right state of mind, I think I'm there's potentially a receptiveness to
Hmm.
hear this message, where that
Yeah.
message might be something along the lines of like, this is everything,
Hmm.
or something like that. And everything in your experience is saying that this is it. There's nothing else but this.
Well, but that's not what's being said. It's not being said that it's obvious that there's what you're talking about is I think what teachers talk about is now.
Hmm.
In your own experience, all there is now. And that's really not what's being said. That's like an objectification or a reliance on perception. What's being said is that what is that which can't be said already. That fulfillment or the unconditional love or infinite, which is already. That's what's being said. Not that there's a landing point now, but that there's no landing point, because there isn't anything that's not what's longed for, what's truly desired.
Part of the trouble is that people are looking for a program, right?
Yeah.
People come, they're living life. I include myself in this category. Life can feel hard at times, and stressful and difficult, and you could feel very vulnerable, and it could be a drag, and you want some reprieve, you want some respite,
Yeah.
um, and so people look for that, and your message, I think, can be frustrating to people because
Oh, totally. Well,
they're
this
not.
doesn't give anything to that. Nothing. It has nothing for that experience whatsoever.
That's what I think is so magical about this message. But it doesn't have anything for that. But people still come to you
Well,
with that need.
yeah. Well, what I find is that there's in not everyone, but there's a sort of a mixture. There's something that hears or really enjoys or revels in, um, not being preached to, not being taught, because there's something that already recognizes or knows that it has nothing to do with them. And in that body at the same time, there can be the frustration because it can be the sense that something needs to happen and they want a program to find out how to make that happen. So
Hmm.
I think that both of those can exist in the same body. Of
Right.
course, if there's only the one, if a body shows up and all it has the need for a program, it'll get frustrated and angry and leave. Yeah.
And would you say that seeking is ultimately uh cause of the problem itself? The seeking, you're seeking a solution, but the seeking is ultimately the cause of what you're trying to solve.
Well, it's separation. It's the experience that I'm separate from everything else, or that or that I live in objectified reality. That's the cause. Yeah.
And would you say that, so there's a juxtaposition that comes about, it seems, of a strong sense of self versus seeing through that illusion, the self being illusory, I think, is something that you would say.
Yeah.
um and you would say there's no advantage to seeing
Well,
through
there's
that illusion.
no.
That
Because
also is, yeah, very paradoxical.
well, not see well, in the beginning, what I said was that all there is that which is most desired. And nobody knows what that is. That's never known. But what's most desired is already everything, including the seeking, including the experience of separation, the objectification of everything. So there isn't anything to gain. It's already that way. There is something that might seem to be lost.
Hmm.
When the individual, when something hears this in a particular body, the individual might have the sense of losing something, of something being lost, which it felt like it had, like meaning or purpose or beliefs. Those things can be lost,
Hmm.
but there's nothing to get.
Yeah.
This already being everything isn't waiting for someone to see through it.